Well, good morning. Let's do that one more time, like on a tour bus. Good morning. Yeah, that's great. That's great. And welcome once again to our final day of Nancy Drew 95. So I think, well, let me ask you, have you had a good time so far? It's been quite a variety of activities, hasn't it? I mean, dinners, games, movies, speakers, several other things I don't even remember. It's been a whirlwind of activity and got a great day going on today. So today's schedule looks something like this. We're going to have a couple of speakers for you this morning, and then we're going to break for lunch. Lunch is going to be served at pizza by the library. Thank you very much, library. And that will be upstairs where we were yesterday. So they'll have pizza outside in the mezzanine area. And then you are very welcome, they said, to get your pizza and take it inside the auditorium where they will be showing another Nancy Drew movie. Yeah. Thank you. Where are you from? After the movie, then we convene back down here. And there is a schedule, printed out schedule with times on it and everything for you. But we'll come back down here, we'll have a third speaker, and then we will have a panel discussion. So we will have that going on in the afternoon, and then tonight is yet a mystery dinner. So a lot going on today. So hopefully we will have a wonderful day with that. You know, this is nostalgic for my wife, Lori, and myself, because this here at the Toledo Library was the very first event that we came to 3 years ago. Very first Nancy Drew event, not event of our lifetime, but very first Nancy Drew event that we came to 3 years ago. And it was right here in this room. And one of the things, actually I should say two of the things, that we have enjoyed and appreciated so much about being involved with this group, the Nancy Drew Sleuths, is that everywhere we go, it is just such a wonderful group of nice, good people. And we have appreciated that so much. But the other thing I would like you to do is look around at each other. Don't knock your microphone doing it, but look around at each other. This is a room full of talented, intelligent, creative, and generous giving people. And I know there are some people who get really, if they have to be around smart people, like me sometimes. I mean, my wife is very intelligent. She doesn't, at risk of embarrassing her, she's got her name on patents, and she graduated magna cum laude, and I graduated, thank the Lordy. So it balances things out. And sometimes, if we don't feel like we're really as smart as others, we get around really intelligent people and they say, that just made me feel dumb. But it shouldn't. When we get around a group like this of caring and creative and talented and intelligent people, it should enlighten us. It should revive us. It should energize us. It should motivate us. And that's one of the things I think comes out of a weekend like this. I would dare say many of you have probably met brand new people. In fact, show of hands, how many of you, this is your very first Nancy Drew event? Whoa, look, feel free to look around. That's at least half of the room. Well, we're having another one in October in Lancaster. We hope you sign up and see you there as well. Because one thing we have done is we've made a lot of new friends. And I'm sure that many of you have met people this weekend and made new friends as well. The other thing it has done for us is we've gone places that we just never would have gone on our own, like Toledo, Ohio. But welcome here today. We are in the presence of a lot of good people, as I said, and the speakers today and the panel is going to be made up of some of those intelligent, creative, and talented people from all of us. And I think we have a lot to learn and to gain and share with each other. Speaking of that, our first speaker today is the hidden pen ghostwriting Nancy Drew with author Stacia Deutsch. Now, I was talking with her just a minute ago, and I said, one thing I have encouraged all of my children to do is to write a book. For various reasons. None of them have done it yet. They have also said, well, Dad, you should write a book. I haven't done it yet. But Stacia has written over 300 books. Yes, wow. Very much wow. She is a New York Times best-selling author, written more than 300 children's books. She began her career with award-winning chapter book series, Blast to the Past. Currently, her books include the popular Girls Who Code, The Friendship Code, and 6 original titles for Spirit Riding Free. Extensive career, Stacia has penned many junior movie tie-in novels for summer blockbuster films like Hotel Transylvania and Batman the Dark Knight. We are very, very fortunate to have her here because her connection with us, and I know there have been many, many discussions and presentations, even some yesterday, about who was Carolyn Keene? Well, we are fortunate to have one of the many Carolyn Keenes with us today to talk about ghostwriting those stories of Nancy Drew, Miss Stacia Deutsch.
I didn't need to turn on the mic, right? I'm good? Okay, thanks. All right, I want to thank everybody so much for having me. When I wrote these books, my understanding was never, ever, ever tell anybody that I did. And so all of a sudden, out of the blue, Jen calls me and is like, I'm going to get permission from Simon & Schuster for you to come and talk about the books. And she did. And I was amazed because it's not in my bio, it's not on my website. I'm very careful and I keep this very kind of under wraps that this is something I do. But it is also one of the things I am most proud of. I know, I'm super lucky. Okay, I know that a lot of you are saying, I want to do this, I want to ghostwrite for Carolyn Keene. So at the end, if I have not answered that, I kind of have this idea that I came up with yesterday about what people in this room might be able to do to get started, headed down that direction. Let's first talk about me and how I got here. But before I do anything, I want to thank everybody. This has been the most gracious, welcoming group. I have met people that I have intersected at conferences before, but I had no idea that we knew each other or that we would come to know each other. Jen has been so amazing, and I'm grateful for all of it. And I don't know who made the bracelet, but I got a Clue Crew bracelet. Thank you so much for that. Totally worth it. I can go home now. I'm done. All right. Nancy Drew and the Clue Crew. I am holding a few of these here. I have like 3 million slides. So if I start talking really fast, just raise your hand and tell me to slow down, because I know I can talk really quickly. All right, let's talk about the books that I wrote, and then we'll talk about how I ended up doing that. So we have Nancy Drew number 3. I'm not so sure until yesterday that I realized how quickly I dove into the Nancy Drew and the Clue Crew spin-off. When I was upstairs looking at the collection, I was number 3. That's pretty amazing right there. And we'll talk about how I got that. Number 10, I wrote Ticket Trouble. Number 15, Mall Madness. 27, The Cat Burglar Caper. And then Nancy Drew and the Magician's Secret, which I wrote for Nancy Drew Diaries. And we are going to talk about this because I told Jen right off, I believe this might be the worst book I ever wrote. And we need to understand why things went so terribly wrong for me. And why they published it anyway. Okay. So how I got here. So for those of you, I don't know that it was in my bio. After college, I decided that I wanted to go to rabbinical school to become a rabbi in Jewish tradition. My degree was in religious studies. I have always loved history, and the breadth of biblical studies was super interesting to me, and I thought this was going to be the most interesting career because you could do anything. I could work on a student organization on campus, I could work in a congregation, I could work for an organization, and very quickly after 5 years of graduate school, I realized I did not like it. I loved the stories. So much I loved the stories. But the job and the board meetings, no. So much to my father's incredible dismay, I walked away from that thinking there has to be something else that I could do. At the time, my kids were reading the Magic Treehouse stories, which I see a lot of you nodding. My kids were little. They're really written for about 2nd to 5th graders, about kids who time travel and meet famous people in history. And this was right around 9/11. And I called a friend of mine, Rhodey, and I said, hey, I have this idea for a book. I'd never written anything like this, right? I'd written sermons, lots of sermons. Newsletter articles, yeah, that kind of stuff. And I said, I have this idea. America is really looking inward. Like, what makes America interesting and great? And I love history, right? So I've been thinking about this time travel book where kids, like the Magic Treehouse, time travel back in history and meet famous people in American history. And kind of the conceit of it is that each of the famous people are quitting, and so these kids have to go back and convince them not to give up their dreams. We wrote together, I really wrote, Rhodey did the research. We wrote together 8 books, 3 before we even started shopping them, and we got an 8-book deal with Simon & Schuster, which was insane. So as these started to come out, the editor from Simon & Schuster contacted me and said, the woman in the office next to me is looking for somebody to write Nancy Drew. Have you ever written mystery? I totally lied. I was, yeah, love it. Oh my gosh, red herrings, totally my thing. No idea what I was talking about. I actually remember it because I was in like a museum or something when she called. Like, I remember that part of it, and I was like, yeah, I could totally do that. So I started to do some research, like, what is a mystery? I had read a lot of them, but until you stop to think about a mystery, it's just a great story, right? Like, never had I thought to break it down. What is the crime? Who is the criminal? Who is the detective? And these things are all super important when you're thinking about a mystery. Red herrings, right? Misleading clues that divert the detective. Had to look that one up. Setting, solution, right? So you kind of have like this arc to a mystery. And I honestly just researched it from the beginning. I have come to realize that everything I write is a mystery. There is a great YouTube video, which I actually started to drop in and then realized with my 9 million slides, I wasn't gonna have time to show. J.J. Abrams, who did Lost, did a TED Talk called The Mystery Box, and he talks about the beginning of Star Wars, where this droid appears showing this video, and then there's all these questions. Who is this princess, or who is this woman in white, wearing white? Who is Obi-Wan Kenobi? Why does this droid have this video? And everything is a mystery. And so you're unraveling this mystery, and it got me thinking. I love that video, and I watch it over sometimes, because everything is a mystery box. Everything I write. Okay, so now that I knew the basics of a mystery, the question was, how am I going to do this? What is a Nancy Drew novel? Who is Nancy Drew? So I'm going to show you the Nancy Drew, a little bit of stuff that I had to research and find out. Nancy and her friends, right? And who are the others in the story? Where is Riverdale? Have you tried to find a map of Riverdale? That was one of the first things I needed to do. Other places in town. All right. Okay. We talked a little bit, yesterday Jen talked a little bit about contract work. So here I am thinking about all these things. I'm just going to go back. Nancy and her friends. I don't have to make those up, right? It is a long-standing tradition of who is Nancy Drew and who are her friends. Even who are the main characters, who are the sub-characters, who lives in the town. It's all there for me. That's not even a piece of what I'm going to do as a hire writer. In fact, I was wondering about your story yesterday. I'm wondering how much she had to build out and how much she was given. Do you know, like, the town was probably given to her?
It depended on the outlines, and we've only seen the first 3. The rest of them are mysteriously missing from the public library. So we can get some quote from the first outlines that Stratemeyer wrote. They're not really chapter by chapter, but it gives the gist of the story and how it's going to flow. And it doesn't always list minor characters, so likely then we probably
Made
some
those up.
quick names and things like that.
Ooh,
Right.
I'm just like standing on the shoulders of a giant, and that's super cool. Okay, so all those things, right, are given to me. And because I am like in this long line of ghostwriters for Nancy Drew, I am going to use those things as the foundation for my story. Even if I'm writing for a 2nd to 5th grader, I'm still using those initial things that have been mapped out over decades, right, for me. Okay, higher work. So this was my first foray into the world of higher work. Also, we call it, like, I do licensed properties. A lot of what I do is licensed properties, which means the sandbox is already there for me to build my castle in. So if it's not Nancy Drew, I did 7 books for Spirit Riding Free, the TV show, and that world is already built. I write for Lego Ninjago. That world is already built. I am taking things that are already in there and creating my own story out of them. Nancy Drew, though, was my first one. I mean, I can't even believe how lucky I am that my very first hire project. And we also talked yesterday about Millie's salary. It is a flat fee. You get paid once, your book is gone, you are done. If they make changes after you turn it in, that's on them. I often don't even reread stuff after I send it out because they may have made substantial changes. You have no idea what they're gonna do because I am hired to write for their characters, their world, their whatever. But that's not to say that it's easy. Okay, so I kind of threw some of these things. So after that first editorial call, the editor who was next door to the Blast of the Past editor wrote, "Dear Stacia, I'm thrilled you might be interested in writing for our new Nancy Drew and the Clue Crew series." And I just thought this was interesting to me. It stars Nancy Drew and her best friends, George and Bess, when they are 8 years old. They're in 3rd grade together and have recently discovered they have a flair for solving mysteries. So they form the Clue Crew, and operating out of Nancy's bedroom as their detective headquarters, the girls offer their services to anyone who might have a mystery to solve. Right, you can kind of skip down. The books are told in the 3rd person with the focus on Nancy, though all 3 girls have an active role in solving the puzzles at hand. They're 9,500 words broken into 10 short chapters, and they'll have 12 to 14 pieces of black and white art. Is this interesting to you? Because it's super interesting to me. As I'm rereading it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so interesting. Okay, okay, cool. So that's the letter I got, and then I was like, this is pretty neat. But this is what I wanted to show you. Somebody yesterday asked about salary. I can't remember who it was, but I'm not a little about the logistics. I don't know what your schedule is, but in typical series fashion, the schedule's very tight. You often, or I often, have somewhere between 3 to 5 weeks to get these things done, whether it's this or any other project. That is how fast the turnaround is on hire work. It's like as if they came up with the idea yesterday and need somebody today and they want to get it out by the end of the month. So, do you see that number? We're aiming for a first draft date of the end of August, beginning of September. I am glad you got permission for me to do this. We offer $4,000 per book. And the series Bible we've created for the older Nancy Drew, and the series uses the Bible that we've created for the older Nancy Drew series as a jumping off point. I'd like to talk to you more if there's more that you want to know, whatever, right? So $4,000. Okay, let's pretend that I write my own series, like Blast of the Past. Blast of the Past, first I found an agent. The agent took the book out. We got paid. At the time, this was 20-something years ago for that beginning of the series. We got paid $7,500, but you get half of it when you sign the contract, half of it when the book comes out, and then you start building, for those of you who have published a book, you start building through sales. 7% on the title over and over and over again, with the hope that you will reach $7,000, which is their advance. Only after you have reached that advance number do you start earning more money on the book. These hire projects, and part of the reason that I am so immersed in this world, they tell you how much it's going to be, they pay you, you move on. That's it. And I am sure for Millie, she was like, cha-ching, cash the check, move on, right? Royalties are great. For sure, royalties are great, and royalties can go forever, but you have to earn out that advance. A lot of books don't. And this is traditional publishing. If you want to talk about indie publishing, I am all for you. If one of you has a book and wants to talk about that, find me on my website, email me. I'm happy to talk about that kind of track as well, although I have not done it yet. All right, so we're talking $4,000, but we're probably talking no more than a month's work, probably less. Turn them around fast. Okay, so she gave me all kinds of interesting stuff from the new Nancy Drew Bible. This is told in the voice of Nancy Drew. We've known her forever, and now we're going to know her for the first time. Cute. In this series, the voice of the books will be Nancy's in the first person. She will tell readers about her adventures, her friends, her enemies, her successes, and her failures, right? And then you can see they live in the town of River Heights, a Midwestern American manufacturing town with a wholesome American exterior. Cousins Bess, Marvin, and George remain Nancy's best friends and super crime stoppers. Okay, this is the key part of these stories, right? So I'm just going to read it. Carson Drew, the well-known and successful attorney, will remain a source of crime stories with his vast client base, some of whom are victims, some of whom are accused, none of whom are guilty. Nancy Drew and the Clue Crew are sweet mysteries, or we call them no-fault mysteries. The darn doll fell into somebody's bag and she took it home, but she was too shy to tell everybody that she had the doll at home. Oh, nobody's gonna die in these books. Nobody's getting punched, nobody's getting shot at. It is sweet, no-fault mysteries. Crazy. All right, so then they give me a little bit of sample on the new look of Nancy Drew. Let me introduce myself. This is their first person example. Or did I already? No, probably not. At least not so you'd recognize me. I'm Nancy Drew. My friends call me Nancy. My enemies call me a lot of other things, like that girl who cooked my goose. They actually sometimes speak like that, but what can you expect from criminals? It's very Scooby-Doo, although in Scooby-Doo the bad guys can really do it and get arrested. In Nancy Drew and the Clue Crew, it's just cute. All right, so that's a little bit kind of what they gave me initially once I agreed to do the project. All right, Nancy Drew cheat sheets of reoccurring characters. We've got Nancy, Bess, Marvin, George, Hannah, the chief, right? These are the reoccurring characters that they tell me about, you know, like a top 10 of your best. I'm going to talk about the illustration in a second, but we'll come back to that. Okay, these are some of the things in their Bible. Nancy Drew, upper teens. She's no longer in high school. Kids read up. So if we're looking at a 3rd to 5th grade reader, we want a character that's a little bit older. Kids do not generally, I guess according to surveys, want to read about kids their same age. So you want to age it up. So she's in her upper teens, shoulder length reddish blonde hair. She's both red and blonde. We got it all. Blue eyes, she's taller than Bess, shorter than George. You never know when that might come in handy. She is an only child. She's absent-minded when she's working on a case, a little bit klutzy. So these are the she now owns a blue hybrid car. You like that? Very nice. If you needed to know her favorite tea, you just never, oh, she's certified in CPR. It's very nice. Like all these little things that you can work into the story if you want. Now, the thing about, oh, here are her friends. Right, George, Marvin, a little bit more about them. So these, I like, under George has mild allergies. Did I use that? That's funny. I would use that now. That's super funny. All right. And then they give you a little bit more about the additional characters, some of the characters that you can use. All right. Peripheral characters, local, so that you have a little bit of local flavor if that's something that you want in the book. Here's the River Heights cheat sheet, right? The main drag is River Street. I went from Nancy Drew, I will tell you, to Boxcar Children, and it was very difficult to map out their town. I have not a clue to this day. Why do they not have a conference like this? It's like, those are crazy. Okay, so a little bit other locations, and these are all pulled from like all these past books that I saw for sale yesterday. All of this stuff is pulled, it's pulled together in a Bible, it's slimmed down because obviously you're not going to use all of it. But what I want you to know is that they didn't give me a plot outline. Millie had this plot outline. They would say to me, let's do spring. Cool. All right, here's some other places. All right, and then they sent me, oh, I brought it here. So number one was the sleepover sleuths, right? And so they sent me, I didn't even have this in a book because the book wasn't out at this time when I'm contracted for number 3. It's already in the pipeline, but it's not out. So they sent me just in a Word document, the first one, the sleepover sleuths. I didn't actually realize until I started to prepare for this how much I pulled, like kind of the basic concept. It was Friday afternoon, Nancy, Bess, and George, God, I would have put a comma after Bess. We're leaving River Heights Elementary School. Bess and George were cousins, and Nancy's 2 best friends. See how they worked in like the description? They were cousins and Nancy's best friends. They were all in the same 3rd grade class. So Nancy has guessing the lunch in the cafeteria. This is a very simple, easy, 2nd grade-ish mystery. How does she guess? The hall smelled fishy. But it sets up the character, right? Now we know that this little girl can solve a mystery with her nose. All right, so then we move to me. So the editor, and I was so surprised to find the editor's note still attached to my book. She had sent me a Nancy Drew notebook, right? Because the Clue Crew didn't exist. So I have this cute little Nancy Drew notebook. With a note that said, Stacia as discussed for reference. So I have this little one. And I was like, oh, look, I saved it just like that. Somebody's someday going to have my collection. Okay, so now I have to come up with an idea, right? So what they'll say to me is, fall, spring, whatever. And a lot of that sometimes has to do with release date. Oh, you know, we want one, what did they say? End of August, early September? Fall. Cool. So part of it for me is coming up with an idea that hasn't been done yet. That in Nancy Drew is like impossible, right? So impossible. Actually, sometimes I watch The Simpsons and I'm like, how? Like, at some point, like everything's been done. So you gotta kind of figure it out. So I wrote ideas, what hasn't been done yet, and more ideas, because if not those, then these. So my first one was called Pony Problems. And the question for me was I needed to give them at least three different ideas. Usually I do something between 3 and 5 ideas when I write a book for a licensor. So I actually remembered loving these. I pulled this off my shelf. They're like if you haven't read them, they're 1 or 2 3-page mysteries, and then the answers are in the back. And I remembered one that I really liked. Total spoiler. I remembered one that I liked where the pony kept escaping the pen because it was climbing over the hay barrels and letting itself out. And I was like, I can totally use that. Like, I can build off that for my own story. Nobody ever is gonna, like, people are gonna be like, oh my God, you took it from Encyclopedia Brown. Yes, I did. And I reworked it, and I changed it, and I created it into a Nancy Drew. But some of these, I had some other ones in my suitcase that I left, but some of these, like, 1-minute mysteries are really good to inspire what you're doing, because it's hard to come up with a mystery. I know some of us in here are lawyers or police officers. That might not be so hard, because you can pull from real life. But for me, I needed some inspiration. And so that was where the first idea came from and how I worked it. So there are 2 ways that people write. They're probably hybrid ideas. They're probably way more than these. But we always talk about outlining versus a seat of your pants method. I am a heavy outliner. That means that I want chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, especially in mystery, because I need to know where it's going. And for me, I want to know who did it so I can plant the seeds and the clues early on. I don't want an aha moment at the end that you're like, wait, what? We have read a lot of those, haven't we? Or seen them on TV, and you're like, okay. Like, for me, I need to really know where I'm going. So here's what I did. Nancy Drew and the Clue Crew number 3, this is the outline that I gave them. As she's getting ready for school one morning, Nancy looks out her bedroom window and discovers a pony eating her lawn. She sneaks up and carefully slips her jump rope around the horse's neck. My husband's an equestrian, he would die reading that. She ties the pony to the tree and then hurries to call her friends, Bess and George. Nancy's dad pops into the bedroom and asks, this is not a book, right? This is just an idea outlined like that. Chapter 2, Bess and George arrive. George recognizes the pony from being from the brand new petting zoo that opened on the outskirts of town. George explains that she went there over the weekend with her brother. Ooh, look, I fit him in. Scott. He loved riding the pony. Okay, so you can see like how I pulled that out. Chapter 3, Mr. Johnson comes rushing out to greet the girls as they arrive at the zoo. Okay, so you can see how I outlined everything down. So then editing. So I send that to the editor. And she wrote back, and I thought that this was kind of an interesting, like, just to see the process. In general, I love the image of a pony that keeps popping up all over town. I'd even like to see more of it. The whole town could be on the lookout for pony sightings. I think it's a really fun premise for a mystery, but logistically, there's some kinks that need working out. It's important to keep in mind that girls have real-life limitations of 8-year-olds. So traveling to far places, handling strange animals, needs to be treated in a way that a real-life 8-year-old can relate to. All right, good point. Well taken. Yep. Okay, but that was her first note, and that's just based on the outline, right? I haven't gotten anywhere yet, but I want to remind you, these are going fast. So if I write the outline on Monday, she's popping this back on Tuesday. I'm rewriting the outline on Wednesday. And then she did it again. So now I got closer. I've got just a couple of comments and general thoughts as you move to the first draft. In the beginning, we need all the standard background information of a series. How the girls met, their ages, they're in the same class, why they formed the Clue Crew, right? And then she says, see manuscript number 1. Also, when Hannah and Mr. Drew are mentioned for the first time, we'll need their background stats too. Okay, so that's super helpful. And I'm imagining Millie, right, with her, she's actually building out the world, even if it's based on a multi-page document. So for her, she also, and you as big Nancy Drew readers are going to note that at the beginning of every book, there has to be some kind of repetition in there, right? To give you, if not a story from the past. Remember when we solved that pony problem? Yeah, says Bess. Whatever, like, that was fun. It was our first mystery, said Nancy. I just made that up. But you can see that I'm either going to tie it back to the first book, or I'm going to try and do something else to try and sweeten the pot and let the reader know where we're at with this ages-old character. Okay, so in the next round of comments, these would be comments on my manuscript. Chapter 4, let's make Nancy's notebook something more fun than black, purple or something. When I read that, I was stunned. I had no idea that there was no criteria for Nancy Drew's notebook. How is that even possible? Or maybe it could just be a different color in this series, but I was like, I can do anything I want, like give her a feather pen or like anything? Okay, cool. Chapter 9, I love that you were able to work in Nancy's clumsiness when she was on the case. Chapter 10, like maybe Nancy can sum up her work on this case as learning the importance of all kinds of friends. Yay! Something sort of sugary lesson is always nice to end with, right? We're talking about a younger version of Nancy Drew. All right, so this is my revised version. This is what I wrote, and I'm telling you again that I was kind of surprised that I had pulled so closely to number 1. Live and learn. I can't believe you're having a turkey sandwich again. 8-year-old Nancy Drew shook her head at her best friend, Bess. Look at that, I'm working it in. The two girls were sitting together at a long white table in the River Heights Elementary school cafeteria. And then Bess says, "How did you know I was having a turkey sandwich? My lunch bag was closed." Okay, so she said, Nancy probably guessed, okay, George shows up, blah, 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 pinned one brown eye, got that in there. I mean, you have a turkey sandwich every day since it's Friday. It's easy to guess you'd have one. Nancy never guesses, Bess reminded George. She uses clues to figure stuff out. "It doesn't take a detective to solve this mystery," Nancy remarked. "Bess is the only one I know who likes ketchup on her turkey sandwich." And she points to the bottom of Bess's lunch bag to see the red stain. "Your mom must have gotten a little ketchup on the bag when she was making your lunch." Right? I didn't, it's another food story. That's cool. And then I like this line, "The case of Bess's lunch is now closed." And the next one, "Not much of a mystery," George commented. "Wouldn't it be great if we had a real mystery to solve?" So I have dumped all the information that you need to know as the reader into the book, and now we can move on to what is the heart of the mystery for this story. Okay, oh look, I just put this in here to show that I pulled the pony from the other. All right, this is kind of funny. So these books, right? We talked a little bit about cover design yesterday, right? So these books were illustrated by someone named Mackie Pamatuian, right? I have no idea how to pronounce it. But I will know how to say it, because in the great irony of the universe, we are talking not quite, maybe close to 20 years later from my first Nancy Drew. My son, who was a writer on Nickelodeon's Baby Shark, my kids all have gone into the arts like their crazy mother. Baby Shark ended from Nickelodeon and he's out of work. And I had this amazing idea to pitch a choose your own adventure book, picture book that we would do together. So we sold a choose your own adventure that'll come out probably this next year. And the other week, a couple weeks ago, the editor was saying, well, we've hired this artist named Mackie to do the art for the choose your own adventure book. And I was like, that sounds so familiar. And then I looked at his website and I was like, oh my, yeah, all these years later, I am back to the same artist that did the covers for Nancy Drew on my own choose your own adventure picture book, which will be out next year. It's like such a small, weird publishing world. So these are cute. You can see, I love the conversation about what like Nancy has looked like over the years, and this is what she looks like here. Okay, so once I wrote the pony problems, we turned to the next one, and Ticket Trouble. Look, I wrote a sweet mystery and put the gun. No. The answer is no. But what I discovered were the things that weren't in the Bible. In the Cat Burglar Caper, these are yours, my husband lives next door to Nancy Drew. Like you just said, you thought Millie like maybe pulled from other places. My best friend in high school does the crime. So in each of these books, like I was amazed at the amount of room I had to just drop stuff in. And it would actually be really, really interesting to try and figure out like who these other people are, because I'm guessing they do too. Like every ghost along the way. My husband loves to tell people that he's in a Nancy Drew novel. A lucky dude. He should put that on his resume. All right, I'm gonna pop ahead. So I did the Nancy Drew and the Clue Crew, and then the editor switched several times, and they came back to me and they said, hey, we want you to try out for the Nancy Drew Diaries. We haven't seen a lot of older writing from you. Could you go ahead and do something for the Nancy Drew Diaries? And Jen did say that she thought everybody would be interested in why I think this is the worst book I've ever written. I will tell you now. So they said, try out for the Nancy Drew Diaries. I try out for stuff all the time. This is one of these things, like even after all these books that I have written, if somebody calls me and says, hey, can you give us a sample chapter? I will write one. And often I don't get those jobs, which is amazing. But they will remember me and get me something later. And sometimes it is a long later, but it is totally worth it. Every time I do it, it is worth it. So I was like, cool. I'm just gonna write something, I don't know. They wanted, I think, 2 or 3 chapters. I sat down at my computer and I did not outline it. I just wrote. Like, oh, la, 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 la. I am thinking sample. They are looking for voice. They are looking for me to get the Nancy Drew information in there. They are looking for everything. The editor calls me back and says, great, now finish it. I had nothing, like literally nothing, like no idea where it was going. I didn't know how it ended. I didn't know who the villain was. I had nothing. And I pushed forward through it. Oh, there's the book. Don't tell everybody how I feel about it. What'd you say?
Did they give you a title?
No, it was literally like, give us a sample. So I made this one up. I do tend to like magicians. I think that there was something in the news. I think that this one came from something in the news, that there was, maybe it was I don't know, maybe some magician had done like a big trick. It may have been the disappearance. Remember when they disappeared the Statue of Liberty? Wasn't that a big one? Like there was something big in the news that I thought, oh, I'm gonna do one about like this magician who's not just like disappearing things, but like criminally disappearing things. Sweet. No, this could be a little bit not as sweet. He could actually get arrested at the end. That was cool. But I just like jumped into this book without knowing where I was heading. And I do know that some writers can do that. And bless them. I cannot do it that way. And live and learn, I have never done anything without an outline since this book. But what was kind of ironic is before I came, and I've always been like, oh my God, this is like embarrassing. Like I was really uncomfortable with it. The editor comments were, I think that's why I turned the page. I thought I put them in there and I was like, it was like 8 pages of comments that I had to clean up to make this book work. There were lots of plot problems. You know, and I did all the work that the editor wanted, right? And then I never looked at it again. I was like, run away, this is awful. But when I looked on Amazon the other day, there were a lot of really nice reviews. There were some really like, okay, not great, not my favorite reviews, but there were a lot of really nice reviews too. And I was like, all right, just cut yourself some slack, Stacia. Like seriously, it's a 4-week turnaround. I was probably paid another $4,000 for this. Not everything's gonna be perfect all the time, but not everybody hated it. I am so hard on myself. Like I need to just like take a breath. I wrote a Nancy Drew book. That's awesome. Like, okay. I'm gonna go back and read the good reviews. And probably that's one of the things that happened is after it came out, I looked and somebody was like, oh, what happened to this book? And then I was like, click out. Like, and I didn't give a chance for the nice people to get there. Okay, so Nancy Drew Diaries, whatever, you can tell me what you think, or don't. Maybe don't, I don't know. All right, a couple of years ago, I'm still floating in this world. Now, I haven't written Nancy Drew again since the Nancy Drew Diaries, and that's the other thing. I'm like, oh, they hated it. It's not true. That's another like game you play when you are a creative. They hate me, everybody hates me, I'm gonna have to quit, I'm gonna become a travel agent. Nobody needs travel agents anymore. I'm sorry if anybody's a travel agent. Whatever. You play like these mental games with yourself, right? And I do have quiet periods where not a lot is going on, and then all of a sudden I'll get like 6 projects in the same week. It's just the way it is, and I'm like, I'm done, it's over, nobody wants me, and then I'm like crying because there's no way I can get it all done by the end of next month. Freelance, that's how it rolls. So they contacted me and said, we're working on these graphic novels. I'm not sure that this is the right one. They're Simon and Schuster one. But they're working on graphic novels. Would I like to try out for a graphic novel? Never done that before either. Never written a mystery before, though. I did that, so cool. Sure, why not? So I contacted a friend of mine who is a storyboard artist and a writer on Phineas and Ferb and does a lot of comic books, and I was like, walk me through it. And so he taught me how to do a script for a graphic novel. They gave a lot more information on what they wanted for their sample. I was also very concerned that their sample was going to turn into the book, so I worked a little harder on that this time. But when I turned it in, I got turned down for the graphic novel. And I was like, you know what? They're right. This was my first time trying to do a graphic novel script. I didn't even really know what it looked like, even with Josh's help. And I was like, I am determined, I'm going to figure this out. I am going to work my way into the Nancy Drew graphic novel another way. So Lego Ninjago called, and they were like, can you do a one-page comic for Ninjago? Total lie. Yeah, love it. Of course I can. But I did a one-page comic for Ninjago, and then they called me again and asked me for a 3-page comic for Ninjago. And I was like, okay, a comic strip is much more similar to a graphic novel, right? So I really thought about that, and I took those jobs with intention, to work my way back to the place where I can go back to Simon & Schuster and say, hey, I want you to know that I've been working on this craft. Now, I haven't gone back to them yet, but it was an exciting opportunity that I will try again. And I will figure out my way toward graphic novels. I have kind of set aside the month of July. I have a book of my own that just never sold for whatever reason. I'm thinking about trying to turn that into a graphic novel script just to get the experience, which is so ironic. I would do it with my own book just so I can try and pitch back to Nancy Drew, but that's what I'm doing. Okay, so that was the graphic novel. I think that these slides were reversed, but this is fine. So this is about the Nancy Drew diaries, right? This was just a little bit of information. Nancy is still a teen, but it'll skew toward the older end of middle grade and is slightly darker and edgier than the, this is about the, yeeks, what am I saying? This is about the graphic novel, right? They wanted it to be edgier, darker than the diaries, but still no graphic violence, sex, etc., to keep it right for young readers. Okay, that's about the graphic novels. Okay, so here's the really funny thing. I think I learned to write not from Blast of the Past, but from Nancy Drew. I really did. Coming up with a mystery, with a character, and it's a very traditional mystery, right? You're talking notebook, 3 clues, 3 suspects, right? Working it out that way, which I hadn't done before. I really learned to write from her, and I am now obsessed with the process of how a mystery looks on the page. Does it go suspect, clue, right? Kind of like the board game Clue. Or does each thing unfold where they stumble upon something, and that thing leads to something else, which leads to something else, which is a different way to unfold the clues. I'm really, really interested in just the process. So I wrote a book a few years later called Mean Ghouls for Scholastic, and it's about a girl who gets a disease that's turning her into a zombie. But I wanted to read, this is one of the reviews that was on Amazon for it. One of the best of the Rotten Apple series deals with a girl who's in quarantine in a special school when she gets zombie-itis, with a notebook to write, that's weird, to write things down or whatever her new foggy zombie brain might forget, and dealing with limbs that are getting stiff. All she wants is the cure and to go home. But if you read the last thing, what's a zombie to do when the cure goes missing, but take a lead from Nancy Drew and solve the mystery? That makes me so proud, right? I wrote a totally different book, and let's go back to the beginning. No one knows I wrote Nancy Drew. So it's where I cut my teeth. It's where I learned the process. And now pretty much everything, like I said, unfolds like a mystery. Let's talk a little bit about some like more recent stuff. I wrote a whole slew of Boxcar Children books, some with Rhodey. Rhodey did not like not having her name on books. So after a whole bunch of books that we did together, since I was writing and she was really doing research, also there wasn't a lot to research in like a Nancy Drew or a Boxcar Children novel, and she sort of didn't know what to do with herself, only we were splitting the $4,000. She went back and became a bookkeeper, and now she does my books. Yay! But she didn't like going to a store and having books there also that did not have our name on it. That really bothered her. I don't care. We went to a Barnes & Noble once together, and there were 7 titles in the store that were ours, but no one would ever know. And that made her nuts. I love it. And I love that I'm Gertrude Chandler Warner, too. That's so cool. The Jessie Files did launch their own new series, or the Boxcar Children launched their own new series a couple years ago called the Jessie Files, and they launched the first 3 books under my name, taking over the series. They then sold Boxcar Children over to Penguin Random House, where it has died a slow death. So they're pushing the older Boxcar Children books, but they killed the Jessie Files. That's cool. Girls Who Code asked me to do a book called The Friendship Code, which is a little bit like the Babysitter's Club. Again, it is a mystery. It unfolds like a mystery. The girls start getting notes that are written in coding language. So they have to decipher what's going on there. And then I just did 3 books, yet another one that's probably dead in the water, for Schleich, which were mystery series about girls who love horses who also solve mysteries. Schleich is a German company. They publish them in German, and they can't seem to find an American distributor. Whatever, I got paid. Let's go back to the whole idea of write for hire. I'm a little sad at my husband being an equestrian, like did so much work with me on those, and I think he's the one that's really sad. But whatevs. We will go on vacation. Call it a day. Oh, look at that. We've hit the end. All right, so I know that you probably have a few questions. Let's go that route and see if you have any questions for me, or did I cover everything so thoroughly? You're like, oh. Yeah.
How many books do you write a year? On average.
So I like to say they're short because I write children's books, but the truth is I write every day, right? I treat this as my job. So from 9 to 3-ish, sometimes in the evening after dinner, I write every single day. So I am probably somewhere around 6 to 8 books a year. Yeah. I feel like I've got 6 to 8 books due the end of May. Right now. Yeah.
Do you find that you're able to get into a flow state with writing?
Yeah. Yes. I don't notice people coming in and out of the room. I can't hear anything. It's a little bit like a brain issue. It's like you're watching a movie and your fingers have to keep up with what they're saying. And I am the worst typist. You would laugh. I type with 5 fingers and 1. Like this. I don't know how I am this fast. It is painful to watch me type. Back, to change the spelling. But I also am like, I am a vomiter of the first draft. Just get it done, because you can always change it, but a blank page just stares at you. Like, my brother has been working on the same book for, I think, 30 years. I'm like, dude, just finish it! I can finish it in a weekend if you just hand it to me. But it's like running a marathon. Not that I've ever run a marathon. It's like what I imagine running a marathon might be, right? When you start, you're gonna walk around the block. It's gonna take a long time before you can run a mile, and a time before you can run 2, and time before you and that's the same with writing, and for me, writing fast, right? I was not this quick at the beginning. Now I'm really fast. And a lot of that has to do with the outlining. Because if I have an outline, I wish I could just stomp on my outline and spit out a book. Because I'm done. It's over. I've told the story. They don't need anything else, right? So that's part of like the whole process for me. So I may spend several weeks on the outline and then just pop out the book. Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah.
So, particularly with these, do you have to be involved since it's right for hire? Do you have to be involved with like marketing, like book tours, school visits?
No. Well, especially with Nancy Drew and Boxcar Children, no, because nobody knows it's me. But like, so like Jessie Files, sometimes I like to do what I can to help the publisher along so that I get hired again, because it's a job, right? So I may do a school visit or something, or they asked me to come to ALA one year for the Jessie Files, like the American Library Association. So I will do something like that because it is good relationship with the publishing house, but no. And so I am watching, I was lonely in the little town I live in, Temecula, California, outside San Diego. And so I met a guy who taught writing through the city, and we started the Temecula Valley Writers and Illustrators. And 98% of people in that group are going to indie publish. And I am watching them, right, put up their book, market it. The book then becomes a teeny percent of what you're doing. You are marketing your book. You are trying to get followers. You are going to book fairs. You are doing all these things when you indie publish. And I like to say I'm lazy. These books are going to sell. I don't have to do anything, right? Like, cool. Kind of awesome for me. But I will do a little bit if they ask me to. But other than that, I just let them fly. Yeah.
Have you seen any changes recently with the introduction of AI?
I'm so scared I'm going to lose a job. Especially the Ninjago. That scares me more because they're basically short Lego stories. But I was kind of messing around with it, and I was like, okay, I needed a story about like how to catch a dragon for Lego, right? So I like put into the thing like, write me a story about a dragon, just to kind of see what would happen. And it was complete garbage. Then I discovered I could say, give me 15 ways to catch a dragon. And that was awesome. That like saved me from going to every D&D site on the planet. So that was really cool. And now, you know, it gives like the resource, which I would never use it without that, because then I can go back and find out where they pulled it from. I do worry. And more so, I think you're going to get handed an outline that was AI generated. Oh, in fact, I just got handed one. I'm actually doing a top secret celebrity book, which is also mystery. But the outline they gave me was like, she goes on an adventure, chapter 2. She gets pushed back and has to rethink the adventure. Chapter 3, I was like, oh my God, you've got to be kidding me. Like, did you just run it through ChatGPT and like hand me? There's nothing here, like literally nothing. I do think as things get better, I am going to get more nervous. Ask me in 5 years. Yeah.
I'm very interested as to how long you have written the Boxcar Children's books, because I worked in school library not too long ago as a volunteer librarian, and they were very popular.
So when did I start? I've written a lot of them, and you know, it was Nancy Drew. I was at Book Expo, which used to be this big convention in New York, for something totally different. And I saw Albert Whitman had the Boxcar Children books there, and I walked up to them and I said, I've written for Nancy Drew, can I write for you? And she was like, give me your card, and she called me the next day. So Nancy Drew like opened this whole other world to me. Let me look at my website and tell you which one was the first one. I think it was the Superstar Watch, which was number 121. I have no idea other than that, again. But I've loved doing the Boxcar Children, and I went to Connecticut to go see the old boxcar that they have there. That was cool. That was really fun. All right. There were so many, and now there aren't. Yeah? No. He's an insurance agent for State Farm? But he's a frustrated writer. He would have loved to have been a writer, and it just didn't go that way for him. And he is a huge reader, and I will tell you that to be a writer, you gotta be a reader. I mean, and then you have to slow down your reading to say, oh look, how did they get all this information up front? Like, what does that look like? All right, I'm going to give one last thing here because I know my time is up and it's time for Jen. I know a lot of people are like, okay, how do I do it? So I was really thinking about this. When I do these talks about writing for hire, I often tell people to look at the educational publishing houses because those are the easy. And I will admit that I have written a lot for educational publishers, like fairy tales, like all kinds of stuff. And that is kind of a good way because they're always looking for people, and like their forms generally ask like if you like gardening or butterflies or you're an expert in knitting or whatever. Those are a good way just to start building a publishing list, or writing short stories for magazines also helps build a publishing list. But I think that this group has something unique, which is the knowledge of Nancy Drew. And I would suggest, this is me, and somebody might argue with me, one, you have to prove that you can finish a novel. So I would suggest that you write one. Any Nancy Drew. And I would suggest that you write fanfic. And look at the fanfic sites online and post. And if you want Nancy to fall in love with Ned, great. You want Nancy to fall in love with Bess, terrific. Whatever you want to do it. But put stuff out there that shows that you are an expert in Nancy Drew or mystery in general, and just start building. But the biggest thing is that you have to show that you can finish a novel. So remember, a manuscript is going to be somewhere around 70 pages at the short end, 100 and a little bit on this end. But you want to make sure that is the number one thing. And even for me, when I submit something nowadays, they want the whole novel. I have proven myself over and over and over again that I can get to the end. But my agent will say, you have to finish the book. Like, that is the top thing. But I think there are a lot of people who get picked up off those fanfic sites. And I would start there because this room has the expertise that I don't have. This room is an incredible resource. So also, as Jen was talking yesterday, I kept seeing like little interesting places that you could fit other things. Like if you're interested in nonfiction, there's lots of little, I don't know, write something about collecting. Like write whatever it is, like you can fit yourself into these other niches. Hardest thing about writing, my number one advice, button, chair, fingers on keys. That is how you get it done. All right, one last.
Do you have any experience with self-publishing?
I don't, but I am thinking about doing it this year. But I have learned a lot from the Temecula Valley writers and illustrators. We actually have an ongoing Zoom class right now. The first session is done, but the second session is coming up with a publisher talking about that. So anybody could like plug into that. It's $12 a session, whatever, but I heard that the first session was amazing, and that's on video, so you can get the video. But no, I am learning a ton about it. There's some interesting things that if you want to email me or whatever, we can talk about, that I have realized when I do pull my book and put it out there, that there are things that I want, like a really cute cover. All right, yes, we're good? Thank you so much again to everybody.